in the fading light of a late summer evening. The small rural town of Cedar Hollow seemed to breathe a quiet sigh beneath a sky streaked with amber and violet. The gentle hum of crickets filled the air, and the scent of hay and earth mingled with the distant calls of returning birds. Nestled on the edge of the town, an old barn stood weathered and half-forgotten amid the sprawling fields that rolled toward the horizon like waves frozen in time. Inside the barn, the shadows clung thick, wrapping around the rough-hewn beams and stacks of hay bales like a shroud. The air was tinged with dust and the faint, musty aroma of old wood and straw. It was here, in this dim refuge, that a young boy named Liam crouched low, his small frame trembling beneath a threadbare jacket. His wide eyes darted nervously toward the barn's creaking door, where faint sounds whispered from the darkness beyond. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe to never miss a new video. And tell me, where are you watching this video from? I love seeing all different people come together for these stories. Liam was no stranger to fear, but tonight it clung to him like a second skin, pressing down on his chest with the weight of something unseen yet palpably close. His fingers, clammy and raw, gripped the rough straw beneath him as he tried to steady his ragged breath. His heart pounded in a frantic rhythm, each beat echoing the silent warning that danger lurked just beyond the barn's threshold. Beside him, a figure moved with low, measured steps. A dog named Max, Liam's loyal companion. Max's sleek, muscular form was coiled like a spring, his dark eyes sharp and unblinking as he growled softly, a deep rumble that vibrated through the stillness. The dog's gaze was fixed on a shadowy figure lurking just out of sight, a silhouette that flickered in the dim moonlight, filtering through the gaps in the weathered walls. Max's growl deepened, a warning note that sent a shiver through the barn's stale air. The tension was thick enough to taste, a silent battle waging between protectiveness and threat in the quiet outskirts of Cedar Hollow. The boy's dog was no ordinary guardian. Max had an uncanny sense of danger, a fierce loyalty that had kept Liam safe through many silent nights and hidden terrors. Liam's breath caught as a sudden noise scraped against the barn's door. A faint whisper of movement that made his skin prickle with dread. The shadows shifted, and the dog's hackles rose, his body rigid as a sentinel standing guard. The boy pressed himself further into the hay, seeking the smallest space to disappear into, his mind racing through the reasons he might be trapped here, alone and frightened. The town of Cedar Hollow was known for its peaceful charm. Quiet streets lined with maple trees, neighbors who exchanged warm greetings, and children who played freely in the sunlit fields. But beneath the surface of this idyllic rural life lay secrets that no one spoke of aloud. Liam's presence in the barn tonight was a silent testament to those hidden dangers. A fragile life caught in the crosshairs of something far darker than the town's gentle facade suggested. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the fields, a figure emerged from the nearby tree line. Jack Reynolds, a seasoned Navy SEAL recently returned home after months stationed overseas, moved cautiously toward the barn. His expression was grim, etched with the sharp focus of a soldier trained to read the faintest signs of distress. Jack had come to Cedar Hollow seeking a brief respite, but the quiet unease that clung to the evening air had drawn him out. Jack's footsteps were deliberate, but soft on the dry grass, his eyes scanning the barn's worn exterior for any sign of disturbance. The distant growl of Max reached his ears before he saw the dog, a flash of dark fur appearing at the barn's entrance. Jack stopped, instincts alerting him to the tension that bristled just beyond the wooden walls. Peering inside, Jack's gaze fell on Liam, curled in a small, protective ball amid the scattered hay. The boy's wide eyes locked onto Jack's, a flicker of hope igniting amidst the fear. Liam's trembling lessened slightly, but the protective growl from Max warned Jack that the danger was not yet past. The barn, once a place of shelter and work, had become a refuge from an unseen threat, a place where a boy hid from shadows he couldn't name, and a dog stood guard against the creeping terror. The sun's last rays slipped away, leaving the scene bathed in the cool blues and grays of twilight, where every sound seemed amplified and every shadow held a secret. Jack took a slow step forward, his voice a calm murmur meant to soothe rather than startle. "Hey there, I'm not here to hurt you," he said softly, letting the warmth of his tone bridge the gap between stranger and frightened child. Max's growl softened just enough to signal a tentative trust, but the dog remained vigilant, eyes fixed on the darkened doorway. Liam's voice was barely a whisper, fragile as the fading light. "I'm scared," he said, the simple truth hanging heavy in the cool air. The boy's story was written in every quiver and glance, lost, alone, and hiding from a danger that had chased him to this lonely barn. Jack knelt down beside Liam, careful not to invade the child's fragile space. "You're safe now," he assured him, though the resolve in his eyes told a different story. One of a protector ready to face whatever shadows had driven this boy into hiding. The barn, once a silent witness to simpler days, was now the stage for a quiet battle between fear and courage, protection and the unknown. Outside, the town of Cedar Hollow carried on unaware, the peaceful rhythm of rural life masking the unraveling of a story that would soon ripple through its fields and homes. But inside the barn, under the watchful eyes of a loyal dog and a returning soldier, a fragile hope began to take root amidst the shadows. The night deepened, and the stars blinked awake in the sky, distant sentinels over a small boy's secret refuge. Max shifted, nudging Liam gently with his nose, a silent promise of protection. Jack rose slowly, eyes scanning the horizon where darkness met the fields, knowing that this was only the beginning of a journey that would challenge the quiet town and bring hidden truths into the light. Jack Reynolds stood just outside the weathered barn, the fading twilight casting long shadows across the fields of Cedar Hollow. The boy, Liam, still crouched inside among the hay bales, eyes wide with a fragile mixture of fear and hope. Max, the dog, remained a silent sentinel, his dark eyes never leaving the barn's entrance. The air was thick with unspoken questions, the weight of mystery pressing down on the quiet rural landscape. Jack had returned to Cedar Hollow only days before, seeking a brief respite from the relentless demands of his recent deployment overseas. The town had been his childhood home, a place of simpler times beneath the sprawling maples and rolling hills. But tonight, that peace was fractured, replaced by a tension that had drawn him toward the barn's shadowed corners. Liam was no ordinary child. The boy's vulnerability was apparent in the way he flinched at the slightest sound, his body tense and guarded. Jack's military training sharpened his perception. This was a child who had known fear intimately, who had learned to hide not just his presence, but the truth of his pain. Yet, beneath the surface of that fear, Jack sensed a deep well of resilience. Max, Liam's dog, was an extension of that resilience. The dog's fierce loyalty radiated in every cautious growl and protective stance. Max was more than a pet. He was a guardian, a living shield against the shadows that haunted this boy. Jack had seen many dogs in his years, companions, protectors, fighters. But Max's intensity was something rare, something born from a bond forged in hardship. The town of Cedar Hollow, with its quaint streets and friendly neighbors, masked a quieter, more fragile reality. Children played in sun-dappled fields, neighbors shared warm smiles over picket fences, and the rhythms of rural life lulled most into a comforting routine. But for Liam, that routine was shattered. His isolation was a secret wound, hidden beneath the surface of the town's gentle charm. Jack knelt at the barn's entrance, offering a steady hand and a calm voice. "My name is Jack. I used to live here too," he said softly. "You don't have to be afraid right now." Liam's eyes flickered with uncertainty, but something in Jack's tone reached past the boy's walls. It was a voice of experience, one hardened by conflict but softened by compassion. "Where are your parents?" Jack asked gently, though he already suspected the answer. Liam's silence spoke volumes, a painful echo of absence and loss. The boy's fingers tightened around the rough straw beneath him, his gaze dropping to the floor. Max shifted beside Liam, nuzzling the boy's hand as if to offer silent reassurance. The dog's presence was a lifeline, a tether to safety in a world that had become unpredictable and dangerous. Jack watched the interaction, understanding that the bond between boy and dog was a fragile fortress against the encroaching darkness. "Do you want to come with me?" Jack asked, his voice steady but inviting. Liam hesitated, torn between the instinct to flee and the faint spark of trust that had begun to kindle. Slowly, the boy rose, his movements cautious but deliberate. Max followed, tail low but eyes alert. Jack led them away from the barn, the evening chill settling over the fields as the sun dipped below the horizon. The town's familiar silhouettes emerged in the distance. Quiet houses, a church steeple rising against the darkening sky, the faint glow of porch lights welcoming the night. Cedar Hollow was a place of refuge and routine. But for Liam, it was also a place of hidden dangers and unanswered questions. As they walked, Jack's mind raced with fragments of information. Liam's vulnerability, Max's protective behavior, the boy's fear, all pointed to a story that had yet to be told. Jack was no stranger to trauma. His years as a Navy SEAL had exposed him to the darkest corners of human experience. But the innocence in Liam's eyes stirred something deeper, a need to protect, to heal, to fight for a future free from fear. Jack's own story was intertwined with this town. He had left Cedar Hollow as a young man, driven by a desire to serve and protect on a larger stage. Now, returning as a stranger in his own home, he found himself drawn into a mission closer to the heart, a mission to safeguard a boy who had been left to fend for himself. The quiet streets and open fields of Cedar Hollow held memories, some sweet, some painful. And tonight, they held a new chapter waiting to be written. The night deepened around them as they approached the modest house Jack had grown up in, its porch light casting a warm glow on the porch swing that creaked gently in the breeze. Inside, the familiar scent of wood smoke and brewing tea greeted them, a stark contrast to the chill that still clung to Liam's trembling frame. Jack's mother, Helen, appeared in the doorway, her face etched with concern and kindness. "Jack, is everything all right?" she asked softly, her eyes flicking from Liam to Max and back again. Jack nodded, though the weight of the situation pressed heavily on his shoulders. "This is Liam," Jack explained gently. "He's been through a lot. I want to help him." Helen's expression softened, and she stepped aside to welcome them inside. The warmth of the house seeped into Liam's stiff limbs, and for the first time that evening, a flicker of relief crossed his face. As Liam settled into the worn armchair by the fire, Jack shared what little he knew. The boy's story was still a puzzle. Fragments of fear, isolation, and a past that seemed to haunt him like a shadow. Max lay at Liam's feet, ever watchful, a silent guardian in the quiet room. Jack's thoughts turned to the town beyond the walls of this safe haven. Cedar Hollow's peaceful exterior masked undercurrents of tension and secrets. He sensed that Liam's plight was not an isolated incident, but part of a larger story waiting to unravel. The boy's fear hinted at threats lurking in the shadows of the community, dangers that had been ignored or concealed. Jack resolved to uncover the truth, to protect Liam not just in this moment, but in the days to come. The bond between the boy and his dog was a testament to resilience, a fragile shield against the unknown. And Jack, with his years of training and experience, was determined to be their steadfast protector. Outside, the night sky stretched vast and endless, stars twinkling like distant beacons of hope. Inside the house, the fire crackled softly, and the quiet whispers of a small town settling into sleep filled the air. But for Jack, Liam, and Max, this was the beginning of a journey, one that would test their strength, uncover hidden truths, and challenge the very fabric of Cedar Hollow's peaceful facade. As the hours passed, Jack sat beside Liam, speaking softly of courage and safety, of battles fought and won, and the promise of a new day. The boy listened, his fears slowly giving way to tentative trust. Max rested his head on Liam's knee, a steady presence in the fragile calm. In the heart of Cedar Hollow, beneath the surface of a quiet town, a story was unfolding, a story of vulnerability, loyalty, and the unyielding will to protect the innocent. Jack knew the road ahead would not be easy, but as he looked at Liam and Max, he understood that sometimes the greatest missions were those fought not on distant battlefields, but within the shadows of home. The dawn crept quietly over Cedar Hollow, spilling pale light across the dew-kissed fields and rustling the leaves of the towering maples that lined the town's main street. The world felt still, save for the soft chorus of birdsong and the distant hum of life beginning anew. But inside the modest house where Jack Reynolds had brought Liam the night before, the atmosphere was heavy with unspoken tension, a fragile calm waiting to be broken. Jack sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of black coffee that had long since cooled, his eyes fixed on the boy across from him. Liam remained withdrawn, his small frame hunched over, fingers nervously tracing the grain of the wooden tabletop. The flicker of sunlight through the window caught in his dark hair, highlighting the shadows beneath his wide, wary eyes. Max lay curled near the door, alert even in repose, ears twitching at the faintest sound. The loyal dog had not left Liam's side since they arrived, his protective instincts undiminished by the safety of the home. Jack knew that Max's vigilance was far from casual. The dog's behavior was a signal of a threat still unseen but palpably close. Jack leaned forward, his voice low and patient. "Liam, can you tell me what happened? What made you hide in that barn?" The question hung in the air, heavy with the weight of truth yet to be uncovered. Liam's gaze flickered toward Max, then back to Jack, as if seeking courage from the dog's steady presence. The boy's voice was barely audible, a fragile thread of sound breaking the silence. I didn't want anyone to find me," he whispered, his words trembling with fear and shame. "There's someone who's been following me. I don't know why." His eyes darted to the window, as if expecting the shadow of that person to appear at any moment. Jack's military instincts kicked into gear. He scanned Liam's face for signs of more, a name, a place, a memory that might explain the boy's terror. But Liam's silence was a fortress, built of fear and confusion, and Jack realized that patience was the only key to breach it. "Do you remember who it was? Anyone you know?" Jack pressed gently. Liam shook his head, swallowing hard. "No, just a man. He's been around the town. I've seen him watching from a distance. Sometimes at the park, sometimes near the school." His words painted a chilling picture, an unseen predator lurking in the familiar places of a quiet town. Max's fur bristled as a sudden noise outside the door made him rise, muscles coiled and eyes sharp. Jack stood as well, moving to the window to peer out. The street beyond was empty, bathed in morning light and silence. But the tension in the room was a stark reminder that danger was never far from Liam's world. Jack's mind raced through possibilities. The man Liam described could be anyone. A stranger, a cruel presence hidden behind the town's friendly facade. Cedar Hollow's peaceful veneer was fragile, and Jack knew from years of experience that threats often hid in plain sight, masked by familiarity. He reached for his phone, scrolling through contacts until he found the number of Sarah Miller, a local social worker known for her dedication to children in crisis. Jack had met her briefly during his last visit home, and he trusted her judgment implicitly. "Liam, I want to bring someone here," Jack said firmly but kindly. "Someone who can help us figure this out and keep you safe." Liam's eyes flickered with a cautious hope, the first glimmer of trust since Jack had found him. The boy nodded slowly, the fragile bond between them strengthening with each shared word. As Jack made the call, Max settled again beside Liam, resting his head gently on the boy's knee. The dog's presence was a constant reminder that Liam was not alone, that someone was standing, guard against the shadows. Minutes later, a knock sounded at the door. Jack opened it to reveal Sarah Miller, a woman in her early 40s with kind eyes and a calm demeanor. She carried a small satchel, and her expression was one of quiet determination. "Jack," she greeted him warmly, then turned to Liam with a gentle smile. "Hello, Liam. I'm here to help." The boy hesitated, then allowed a faint smile in return, a small but significant step toward healing. Inside the house, Sarah sat with Liam, speaking softly and listening attentively. Her presence was a balm, a steadying force in the storm of the boy's fear. She asked questions carefully, giving Liam space to answer on his own terms. Slowly, pieces of the puzzle began to emerge. Liam spoke of the man who had been watching him, a figure who seemed to follow his every move, lurking near schoolyards and playgrounds, his gaze heavy and unsettling. He described the feeling of being hunted, the nights spent hiding and trembling in the dark corners of the town. Each detail deepened the urgency of their mission. Jack watched quietly, absorbing the fragments of Liam's story. The town he once knew was no longer just a backdrop of peaceful fields and friendly faces. It was a landscape shadowed by fear and suspicion. But amidst the uncertainty, he found resolve, a determination to protect this boy and uncover the truth. As the conversation continued, Max remained vigilant, his ears twitching at every sound beyond the walls. The dog's instincts were a silent alert, a reminder that the threat was real and close. Jack exchanged a glance with Sarah, both understanding that the safety of Liam, and perhaps others, depended on what they would do next. Outside, the world of Cedar Hollow carried on, unaware of the quiet storm gathering within one of its homes. Children played in the distance, neighbors tended gardens, and life unfolded in its gentle rhythms. But for Liam, Jack, Sarah, and Max, the day marked the beginning of a deeper search, a quest to unmask the shadows that had crept into their town. Jack stepped outside briefly, taking in the morning air, sharp and fresh. He thought about the training and discipline that had shaped him, the battles fought in distant lands, and the new fight that awaited him here at home. Protecting Liam was no longer just a mission. It was a personal vow. Returning inside, Jack sat beside the boy, offering a steady hand and a quiet promise. "You're not alone anymore," he said firmly. We're going to find out who's been hurting you, and we're going to make sure you're safe." Liam's eyes met his, flickering with a fragile hope that was beginning to grow stronger. The day stretched ahead, filled with questions yet to be answered and dangers yet to be faced. But in the warmth of that small house, amidst the steady presence of Max and the compassionate support of Sarah, Liam took tentative steps toward trust. Jack knew the road ahead would be difficult. The shadow following Liam was a threat that had to be confronted, a secret buried in the heart of Cedar Hollow's quiet streets. But for now, in the soft morning light, a fragile alliance was forming, a bond of protection, courage, and the determination to bring hidden dangers into the open. As the sun climbed higher, casting light into the corners of the room, Liam's trembling lessened, replaced by the faintest spark of hope. Max rested his head on the boy's lap, his eyes closing briefly in a rare moment of calm. Jack sat back, ready to face whatever lay ahead, knowing that sometimes the hardest battles were fought not on distant fields, but in the quiet shadows of home. The sun dipped lower over Cedar Hollow, casting long shadows across the quiet streets and golden fields. The day had been heavy with whispered conversations, hushed questions, and the subtle tension that seemed to cling to the very air. Inside the modest house where Liam had found temporary refuge, the atmosphere shifted from fragile hope to determined focus. Jack Reynolds paced the small living room, the weight of the morning's revelations pressing on his mind. Liam sat nearby, clutching a worn blanket, eyes flickering with a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. Max lay close, alert and watchful, his ears pricked toward every sound beyond the walls. The boy's dog had become an unlikely beacon, guiding Jack through the tangled threads of a story that was far from complete. Sarah Miller, the local social worker, sat across from them, her notebook open, but momentarily forgotten. She had listened intently as Liam recounted the eerie presence that haunted his days, the man who watched from the shadows, whose gaze followed him with an unsettling intensity. Details were scarce, but the fear was unmistakable, a living thing that clung to the boy's every step. Max's behavior had been a crucial clue from the start. The dog's growls and restless pacing the night before had signaled the presence of something or someone out of place. Jack observed how Max's instincts sharpened whenever the mention of the unknown man surfaced. It was clear that the dog's protective nature was keyed into a threat that was both real and immediate. Jack knelt beside Liam, offering a steadying hand. "Max's reactions have helped us so far," he said quietly. "Dogs can sense things we don't always see. Maybe Max can lead us to where this man's been, where he's watching from." Liam's eyes brightened slightly, hope mingling with a lingering fear. The thought of having an ally like Max guide them was a small comfort amid the uncertainty. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "We need to gather more information, but carefully. If this man is dangerous, we can't afford to push Liam too hard or put him at risk." Her voice was calm but firm, a reminder that the next steps had to be measured and precise. Jack stood, determination hardening his features. "I'll take Max and Liam out to the barn and the nearby areas where the boy said the man was seen. Max's sense of smell and behavior might help us track any recent activity." He glanced at Liam, who nodded hesitantly, clutching Max's leash as if it were a lifeline. The sun was slipping behind the hills as they stepped outside, the air cool and tinged with the scent of earth and fading grass. Max's nose twitched as he led the way, ears swiveling as he moved with purpose. Liam followed closely, his small hand occasionally reaching out to steady himself against the dog's thick fur. Jack watched Max carefully, noting every change in the dog's posture. The subtle shifts in weight, the sudden tensing of muscles, the flicker of alertness in his eyes. These were the signs of a keen hunter, a protector finely attuned to danger. Max's movements were deliberate, guiding them toward the unseen thread that connected Liam's fear to a tangible threat. As they approached the old barn, Max's behavior became more intense. The dog circled the structure, nose to the ground, pausing at the weathered wooden door that creaked gently in the evening breeze. Liam's breath caught as Max growled softly, a low warning sound that vibrated through the stillness. Jack stepped forward cautiously, shining a flashlight along the ground. There, partially hidden beneath a pile of hay, was a scrap of cloth, torn, stained, and unmistakably recent. Jack's jaw tightened. This was proof that someone had been here, someone who had brushed close enough to leave a mark. Max's eyes flicked to a narrow gap in the barn's side wall, a small opening barely visible in the fading light. The dog's growl sharpened, his body poised to spring. Jack peered inside, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the darkness to reveal scuff marks on the floor and faint footprints in the dust. Liam swallowed hard, the evidence confirming his fears. "He's been hiding here," the boy said, voice barely above a whisper. "Watching me." Max's hackles rose as he sniffed eagerly at the ground, tracing a scent path that led away from the barn and into the surrounding woods. Jack's mind raced. The man's presence was not just a distant threat, but an immediate danger lurking close by. Max's keen senses were their best chance at uncovering the truth before the darkness closed in again. They followed Max's lead, moving carefully through the underbrush as the last light of day slipped away. The dog's nose remained low, guiding them through tangled branches and over uneven ground. Liam's footsteps faltered at times, but Max stayed close, a steady anchor in the encroaching night. After several minutes, Max stopped abruptly, ears pricked and body rigid. Jack raised his flashlight, illuminating a small clearing edged by dense trees. There, half hidden in the shadows, was a makeshift campsite. Discarded food wrappers, a worn backpack, and scraps of fabric that matched the cloth found in the barn. Jack's heart quickened. This was the hideout, the place where the Watcher had been biding his time. The realization sent a chill through the group, underscoring the urgency of their mission. Liam's voice trembled as he stepped closer, eyes scanning the area. "He's been here, waiting." Max growled low, a warning that the threat was still very real, still very close. Jack knelt beside the boy, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We've found where he's been," he said quietly. "Now we have to decide what to do next." His gaze met Liam's, filled with a mix of resolve and compassion. This was no longer just about hiding. It was about confronting the fear and taking back control. Sarah's voice came over the phone as Jack dialed her number, her calm presence a steadying force. "I'll coordinate with law enforcement," she said. "We need to move carefully, but act quickly." The plan was beginning to take shape, a coordinated effort to protect Liam and unmask the danger lurking in their town. Max nudged Liam gently, his warmth a silent promise of protection. The bond between boy and dog had proven to be a lifeline, a guiding light through the shadows that threatened to swallow them whole. Jack knew that with Max's help and the support of Sarah and the community, they stood a chance. As darkness settled fully over Cedar Hollow, the small group made their way back toward the safety of the house. The night was alive with the sounds of distant owls and rustling leaves, a reminder that life continued even in the face of fear. Jack glanced at Liam, whose steps were steadier now, bolstered by the knowledge that he was not alone. Max walked faithfully at his side, ever vigilant, ready to guard against whatever dangers might come. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges and risks. But with the keen senses of a loyal dog leading the way, and a team determined to stand against the shadows, there was hope. Hope that the hidden threats in Cedar Hollow could be uncovered, and that Liam could find safety and peace once more. The first light of dawn filtered through the curtains of the small living room where Jack Reynolds, Liam, and Max had gathered the night before. The quiet hum of the town, waking up beyond the window, seemed worlds away from the tension that clung to the air inside. Jack's mind was restless. Turning over the fragments of the previous evening, the makeshift campsite hidden in the woods, the worn cloth found in the barn, and Max's unwavering vigilance. Each clue painted a picture of a man, lurking dangerously close to Liam, a threat that had remained hidden in plain sight. Jack's military training sharpened his focus as he sat at the kitchen table, reviewing what little information they had. Liam's fear was no longer just a child's imagination. It had a face, a presence rooted in the town's shadows. Jack knew that this man was more than a distant watcher. He was someone who had embedded himself into the fabric of Cedar Hollow, moving unseen but leaving behind traces that Max had begun to unravel. Max lay beside Liam, his eyes half closed but alert, the bond between boy and dog stronger than ever. Liam's small hand rested on Max's thick fur, a gesture of trust that had deepened since their first encounter in the barn. The dog's protective nature was a lifeline, a steady force in the swirling uncertainty that surrounded them. Jack stood and moved toward the window, watching the streets come alive with morning activity. Neighbors greeted each other with familiar smiles, and children laughed as they made their way to school. The peaceful rhythm of Cedar Hollow was a stark contrast to the dark undercurrents that threatened to unravel it. Determined to uncover the truth, Jack contacted Sheriff Tom Harlan, a man whose reputation for fairness was well known in town. Jack knew that securing law enforcement's involvement was critical, but he also understood the delicate balance that came with it. The sheriff's office was small, and the threads of the community were tightly woven, sometimes too tightly to allow secrets to be easily exposed. "Sheriff, we've found evidence of someone stalking a young boy in town," Jack said firmly over the phone. "There's a campsite in the woods, and more signs that this man has been hiding and watching. We need immediate assistance." The sheriff's voice was cautious but resolute. "I'll send deputies out to investigate and keep an eye on the area. We'll do everything we can to protect the boy." Jack hung up, feeling a mix of relief and frustration. The wheels of official action were turning, but he knew that time was critical. The man could be watching them even now, blending into the town's quiet streets. He turned to Liam, whose eyes were fixed on the window, reflecting a mix of fear and hope. "We're not letting this go," Jack promised. "Max and I will stay close. We'll watch your back." Liam nodded, the weight of isolation lifting just slightly in the presence of someone who understood and cared. Throughout the day, Jack and Sarah coordinated efforts to gather information discreetly. Sarah reached out to local schools, community centers, and neighbors, looking for anyone who might have noticed suspicious behavior or unfamiliar faces. The responses were slow, tentative, but a pattern began to emerge. A man seen lurking near playgrounds, standing at the edges of gatherings, always just out of reach of direct confrontation. Max's keen senses continued to be an invaluable asset. Jack took the dog on patrols through the town's quiet corners, watching how Max's behavior shifted with each new scent or sound. The dog's focus was unwavering, a living compass pointing toward the unseen threat. One afternoon, as they walked near the town's old mill, a place long abandoned but popular among local children for its shadowy nooks. Max suddenly tensed, ears erect and hackles raised. The dog growled softly, low and warning, a sound that cut through the stillness like a blade. Jack's heart pounded as he scanned the area. There, partially concealed behind a rusted metal beam, was a figure, a man whose gaze was sharp, calculating, and unmistakably the stalker who had haunted Liam's steps. The man's face was weathered, his eyes cold and unreadable beneath a hood pulled low against the fading light. Jack stepped forward, his voice steady but commanding. "You need to stop this. Now." The man's lips curled into a faint, unsettling smile. "You're meddling where you don't belong," he said quietly, his tone low and threatening. Max growled louder, positioning himself protectively in front of Liam, muscles coiled and ready. The confrontation was brief, but charged with an electric tension. The man retreated into the shadows, disappearing before Jack could pursue, leaving behind an echo of menace that lingered in the air. Jack's resolve hardened. This was no longer a distant threat. It was a man who had chosen to make Cedar Hollow a hunting ground. Back at the house, Jack debriefed Sarah and Liam, the urgency of their situation underscored by the man's brazen appearance. Sarah's eyes were sharp with determination. "We need to involve more help, maybe even outside agencies," she said. "This isn't just about Liam anymore. Someone like that could hurt others." Jack agreed. He contacted a trusted friend from his Navy SEAL days, a federal agent stationed nearby, explaining the situation and requesting discreet assistance. The call was brief but promising, a sign that the small town's shadows were about to be illuminated by a wider investigation. Meanwhile, Liam's behavior began to shift. The terror that had gripped him started to loosen its hold, replaced by tentative confidence fostered by Jack's steady presence and Max's unwavering loyalty. The boy practiced walking without flinching, speaking without hesitation, and daring to imagine a future free from fear. Max remained ever vigilant, his keen senses a constant shield. The dog's protective instincts were more than instinct. They were a bond forged through shared survival and mutual trust. Jack watched the pair, understanding that their connection was a powerful weapon against the darkness. As evening fell over Cedar Hollow, the town's peaceful facade belied the storm gathering beneath. Jack prepared for the days ahead, knowing that the fight to protect Liam and the community was far from over. The stalker remained at large, his presence a shadow lurking in familiar places. But with allies at his side, both human and canine, Jack was ready to face whatever dangers lay ahead. The quiet town might hold secrets, but it also held resilience, a determination to stand against fear and reclaim the safety that had been stolen. In the soft glow of the evening, Jack knelt beside Liam, his voice steady and reassuring. "We're going to keep you safe, no matter what." Liam nodded, Max resting his head gently on the boy's knee, a silent promise of protection. The path forward was uncertain, fraught with risk and shadowed by the unknown. Yet, amid the quiet fields and familiar streets of Cedar Hollow, a story of courage, loyalty, and unyielding resolve was unfolding. One that would test them all. But ultimately, one that held the promise of justice and healing. The night air hung heavy over Cedar Hollow, thick with the scent of damp earth and the faint rustle of leaves stirred by a restless breeze. The small town, so often bathed in gentle moonlight, now seemed cloaked in a shadow deeper than darkness itself. Jack Reynolds moved silently through the streets with Max at his side, the dog's low growl a steady undercurrent to the tension that tightened Jack's chest. They had followed the trail of subtle clues, the discarded scraps, the hidden campsite, the fleeting glimpse of the man who had haunted Liam's days. And now, the confrontation was imminent. Jack's military training sharpened every sense. His eyes scanned the dimly lit alleyways, his ears straining for the faintest sound. Max's body was taut, ready to spring at the slightest threat. Ahead, near the edge of town, the old mill stood like a sentinel from another era, its rusted beams and broken windows casting jagged shadows on the cracked pavement. It was here that the stalker had been spotted last, lurking in the periphery of innocent lives, feeding on fear and silence. Jack's grip tightened on Max's leash as they approached the mill's entrance. The dog's growl deepened, signaling the presence of the man they sought. Then, from the darkness, a figure stepped forward. Tall, imposing, his face half hidden beneath a hooded jacket, eyes gleaming with a cold, calculating menace. "You shouldn't have come here." The man's voice was low, edged with warning and challenge. "This is my ground." His words sent a chill through Jack's veins, but the former SEAL stood firm, his voice steady. "This ends tonight. You're not going to hurt anyone else." The man's lips twisted into a cruel smile. "You think you can stop me? This town is mine to watch, mine to control. You." He gestured toward the darkness behind Jack. "You're just a fool trying to play hero." His gaze flicked to Max, who growled fiercely, stepping between Jack and the man with a protective snarl. Suddenly, the stalker lunged forward, a flash of movement that was met instantly by Max's powerful bark and Jack's swift counter. The confrontation exploded into motion, a clash of wills and wills of steel beneath the crumbling beams of the mill. Jack's training took over as he maneuvered with precision, blocking the man's strikes and searching for an opening. Max's growls and snaps kept the attacker off balance, the dog's presence a formidable deterrent. The man was quick, desperate, but Jack's resolve was unyielding. "Back off," Jack warned, his voice cold and commanding. "This ends now." The man snarled, his desperation growing. "You don't understand what you're dealing with." But Jack pressed forward, his movements calculated, every strike aimed to incapacitate without unnecessary harm. Max lunged, snapping at the man's arm, forcing him to stagger. Jack seized the moment, twisting the attacker's arm behind his back, the man's resistance faltering under the former SEAL's relentless grip. The fight was raw, tense, but it was Jack's strength and training that prevailed. Breathing heavily, Jack pinned the man to the ground as Max stood guard, teeth bared. The stalker's eyes flashed with fury and defeat. "You think this is over?" He spat, but his voice was hollow, stripped of power. Jack pressed his weight down, securing the man's wrists with his own belt. "It's over," he said firmly. "You won't hurt Liam or anyone else again." Max's low growl softened slightly, the threat momentarily subdued. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as deputies arrived, lights flashing through the night. Sheriff Tom Harlan and his team moved swiftly, surrounding the scene with practiced efficiency. Jack handed the subdued man over, his gaze lingering for a moment on the defeated figure. As deputies secured the suspect, Jack turned to Max, who wagged his tail briefly before settling back into a watchful stance. Liam's safety was no longer a question. It had been secured through courage, vigilance, and unyielding loyalty. Back at the house, the atmosphere was heavy but relieved. Liam sat quietly, Max resting his head on the boy's lap, both offering silent comfort. Jack spoke softly, the adrenaline of the confrontation ebbing away. "You're safe now. No more hiding, no more fear." Liam's eyes glistened with tears, a mixture of exhaustion and relief washing over him. Sarah Miller arrived soon after, her presence a calming balm. She moved to Liam's side, her gentle voice offering reassurance and care. "We'll make sure you have all the support you need," she said, her eyes meeting Jack's with quiet gratitude. The community, once unaware of the darkness lurking beneath its peaceful surface, began to rally. News of the stalker's capture spread cautiously, bringing a mixture of shock and relief. Cedar Hollow's residents looked toward healing, their faith in safety and trust slowly rekindled. Jack remained vigilant, knowing that recovery was a process, not an instant fix. But with Max's protective presence and the support of new allies, the boy's path forward was brighter. The shadows that had once threatened to consume Liam were pushed back by courage, loyalty, and the unbreakable bond between boy and dog. As night gave way to dawn once more, Jack stood outside the house, watching the sky lighten with hope. The fight had been hard, but it had been won, not just by force, but by the unyielding will to protect what was right. Inside, Liam slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. Max curled at his feet, a steadfast guardian in the quiet house. Jack knew the road ahead would have challenges, but in this moment, there was peace, a promise that no shadow could ever fully claim the light. The morning sun filtered gently through the curtains of the small living room, where Liam sat quietly, his gaze distant but calmer than it had been in weeks. The shadows that had haunted his days were beginning to recede, replaced by a tentative sense of safety woven through the steady presence of Jack Reynolds and Max, his loyal dog. The house, once a refuge from fear, was now a place where healing could begin. Outside, the town of Cedar Hollow stirred to life, its streets filled with the familiar rhythms of daily routines. Yet beneath the surface, the events of recent days had sent ripples through the community. Word of the stalker's capture had spread, stirring a mixture of shock, relief, and quiet questions among the residents. Jack sat across from Liam at the kitchen table, sipping coffee as he watched the boy trace patterns on the wood grain. "How are you feeling today?" Jack asked gently, his voice steady but warm. Liam shrugged, a small tentative smile flickering at the corners of his lips. "Better," he admitted softly, less scared. That was a victory in itself. The boy's guarded demeanor was slowly giving way to moments of openness, a sign that trust was taking root. Max lay nearby, alert but relaxed, ever the silent guardian. Word had reached the town's leaders and neighbors, and a quiet movement was beginning. A few residents, once hesitant to get involved, now approached Jack and Sarah with offers of support. They spoke of wanting to protect the children of Cedar Hollow, to ensure no other secret sufferings went unnoticed. Sarah Miller organized a meeting at the community center, inviting parents, teachers, law enforcement, and local volunteers. The turnout was larger than expected, a testament to the town's collective desire for change. The room buzzed with nervous energy as people shared stories, concerns, and ideas. Jack took the floor, his military bearing blending with genuine compassion. "What happened to Liam should never happen to any child here," he said firmly. "We need to work together, not just to protect, but to create a place where kids feel safe and supported." A local teacher, Mrs. Alvarez, spoke next, her voice trembling with emotion. "There have been whispers, things we've seen but didn't know how to address. Maybe now we can finally face them." The community's acknowledgement of hidden dangers marked a turning point. Parents pledged to watch more closely, neighbors agreed to communicate openly, and the sheriff's office promised increased patrols near schools and parks. A task force was formed, combining local resources with support from outside agencies. Back at the house, Liam's days settled into a new rhythm. Jack helped him with schoolwork, encouraging the boy to ask questions and express his feelings. Max's companionship was a constant comfort, the dog's presence a buffer against lingering fears. One afternoon, while walking through the town square, Liam spotted other children playing freely. For the first time in a long while, he felt a stirring of connection, a desire to join in. Jack watched quietly, understanding the significance of this small step toward normalcy. But healing was not without challenges. Some townsfolk remained wary, hesitant to confront the town's darker side. Rumors and whispers threatened to resurface, testing the fragile trust that had begun to form. Jack and Sarah worked tirelessly, offering counseling and support, mediating tensions, and fostering dialogue. Their efforts slowly chipped away at the walls of fear and silence that had long protected the secrets of Cedar Hollow. Max, ever vigilant, sensed the undercurrents of unease, his protective instincts guiding Jack through moments of uncertainty. Together, they patrolled neighborhoods, offering a reassuring presence that strengthened community bonds. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack and Liam sat on the porch, watching the sky blush with shades of pink and gold. Liam leaned against Jack, a silent thank you in his quiet companionship. "We're getting there," Jack said softly. "One day at a time." Liam nodded, eyes reflecting the fading light and a newfound hope. The journey ahead was still long, but the path was clearer, marked by courage, community, and the unbreakable bond between a boy and his dog. In Cedar Hollow, the winds of change were stirring, carrying with them the promise of healing and the strength to face whatever shadows remained. Together, they would build a town where fear no longer ruled and every child could find a safe place to grow. The courtroom was tense, a heavy silence pressing down on the gathered spectators as the prosecutor laid out the case against the man who had stalked Liam through the quiet streets of Cedar Hollow. Rows of wooden benches, filled with townsfolk, neighbors, and family members, all bore witness to a story that had long been whispered in shadows, but was now brought into the harsh light of justice. Jack Reynolds sat near Liam, his expression steady, a quiet pillar of support for the boy who had endured so much. Liam's hands trembled slightly as he clutched Max's leash, the dog's calm presence a source of comfort amidst the swirling emotions. The boy's eyes, once clouded by fear, now held a flicker of determination, a sign that healing was beginning, though the path ahead was still fraught with challenges. The prosecutor's voice was unwavering as she recounted the evidence. The hidden campsite in the woods, the torn cloth found in the barn, the man's repeated attempts to intimidate and frighten Liam. Each piece was bolstered by testimony from Jack and Sarah Miller, who described the careful steps taken to protect the boy and uncover the truth. Jack's own testimony was measured but powerful. He spoke of finding Liam hiding in the barn, the dog, Max's behavior that had signaled danger, and the confrontation with the stalker near the old mill. His military background lent weight to his words, painting a vivid picture of the man's threat and the urgency of protecting the innocent. Sarah offered a compassionate perspective, detailing her work with Liam and the emotional toll the stalking had taken. Her testimony highlighted the importance of community support and the challenges faced by children who suffer in silence. Her voice carried a quiet strength, underscoring the need for vigilance and care. The defense attorney attempted to sow doubt, questioning the reliability of the evidence and the motives behind the accusations. But the weight of proof was undeniable. Witnesses came forward, teachers who had noticed the man lurking near the school, neighbors who had seen suspicious behavior, and law enforcement officers who had documented the investigation. Liam's voice, when called to testify, was soft but clear. He described the fear that had gripped him, the nights spent hiding, and the relief he felt when Jack and Max arrived to protect him. The boy's courage in speaking out was met with a ripple of quiet approval from the courtroom. Throughout the proceedings, Max remained by Liam's side, a steadfast companion whose presence spoke volumes. The dog's calm demeanor was a symbol of protection and loyalty, a living reminder of the bond that had helped Liam find strength. Outside the courthouse, the townspeople gathered in small groups, discussing the trial with a mixture of hope and apprehension. The case had brought to light uncomfortable truths, forcing Cedar Hollow to confront its darker side. Yet, it also fostered a sense of unity, a collective desire to prevent such harm from ever occurring again. Jack met with Sheriff Tom Harlan after the trial, both men reflecting on the journey from fear to justice. "This is just the beginning," Jack said quietly. "We need to keep building a safe environment for kids like Liam." The sheriff nodded, his expression somber but resolute. "We'll be watching, and we'll be listening." Back at home, Liam began to open up emotionally, supported by Jack, Sarah, and the gentle presence of Max. Therapy sessions provided a safe space for the boy to explore his feelings, confront his trauma, and begin the slow process of healing. The narrative of Liam's ordeal became a catalyst for broader conversations within Cedar Hollow. Schools implemented new programs focused on child safety and awareness. Community groups formed to support vulnerable families, and local leaders committed to transparency and vigilance. Yet, healing was not linear. Liam faced moments of fear and doubt, setbacks that challenged his progress. But with each step, he grew stronger, buoyed by the unwavering support surrounding him. Max remained a constant guardian, his instincts finely tuned to Liam's emotional needs. The dog's companionship was more than protection. It was a source of comfort and unconditional love, a bridge between past pain and future hope. Jack watched Liam's transformation with quiet pride. The boy who had once hidden in fear was learning to trust again, to find joy in simple moments and believe in the possibility of safety. Their journey was far from over, but the foundation had been laid. As the seasons changed, Cedar Hollow began to heal alongside Liam. The town's collective wounds were addressed with honesty and care, fostering resilience and a renewed commitment to protect its children. In the stillness of a late afternoon, Jack sat with Liam and Max beneath the shade of a maple tree in the town park. The boy laughed softly as Max chased a thrown stick, a sound that once seemed impossible. Jack's voice was gentle as he spoke of courage and the strength found in facing the darkest moments. Liam looked up, eyes shining with quiet determination. "I'm ready," he said simply. "Ready to be safe. Ready to live." Jack smiled, knowing that while the road ahead held challenges, the bonds of loyalty, courage, and community would carry them forward. Together, they had turned fear into hope, silence into voice, and darkness into light. The morning sun filtered softly through the lace curtains of the small house on Elm Street, casting warm patterns across the worn wooden floors where Liam now played freely. His laughter, once a rare and fragile sound, filled the rooms alongside the gentle rustling of Max's paws as the loyal dog bounded beside him. The house, once a refuge from fear, had blossomed into a sanctuary of healing and hope. Jack Reynolds watched from the doorway, a quiet smile tugging at his lips. The boy who had once been crippled by terror was now learning to embrace life's simple joys. The chase of a thrown ball, the thrill of a game, the comfort of friendship. Max remained at Liam's side, ever watchful, a guardian whose silent presence spoke louder than words. The community of Cedar Hollow had shifted as well, the wounds of the past slowly mending through collective effort and compassion. Neighborhood watch groups met regularly. Schools held open forums on child safety, and local leaders prioritized resources for families in need. The town was no longer a place where shadows lurked unseen. It was a community awake and determined to protect its most vulnerable. Liam's days were filled with the steady rhythm of school, therapy, and play. Each step forward was a victory, a testament to resilience nurtured by love and steadfast support. Jack and Sarah Miller continued to guide him, their presence a constant reassurance that he was not alone. One afternoon, as golden leaves drifted lazily through the crisp autumn air, Liam and Max wandered to the edge of the town's open fields. The vast expanse stretched before them like a canvas of endless possibility, the gentle breeze whispering promises of freedom and renewal. Liam threw a stick with all his might, watching as Max dashed after it, ears flapping and tail wagging like a banner of triumph. The boy's smile was radiant, unburdened by the fears that had once shadowed his every step. Jack followed at a distance, his heart swelling with pride and quiet relief. The journey to this moment had been long and arduous, marked by moments of doubt and struggle. But here, beneath the wide sky and golden light, the promise of healing was tangible. As Max returned, stick in mouth, Liam knelt to embrace his companion, whispering a thanks for the unwavering friendship that had carried him through the darkest nights. Max licked the boy's cheek, a gesture of pure affection and loyalty. Jack approached, settling beside them on the soft grass. "You've come a long way," he said gently. "I'm proud of you." Liam looked up, eyes shining with newfound confidence. "I'm ready for what comes next," he replied. "To be safe, to be happy." The bond between them, the boy, the dog, and the man who had become family, was unbreakable, forged in trials and strengthened by hope. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting the fields in a warm, amber glow, Jack reflected on the resilience of the human spirit and the power of loyalty and love. Cedar Hollow, once a town shadowed by fear, was now a place of renewal, a community bound together by courage and the determination to protect one another. Liam stood, brushing the grass from his knees, the weight of the past lifted from his shoulders. With Max at his side and Jack nearby, he stepped forward into a future shaped not by fear, but by strength and possibility. The field stretched endlessly before them, a symbol of the journey yet ahead and the promise of brighter days. Together, they faced the horizon, ready to embrace the healing, hope, and joy that awaited. The sun hung low over the fields of Cedar Hollow, casting a warm, golden light that stretched across the tall grass and wildflowers swaying gently in the evening breeze. The sky was painted with hues of pink and orange, a breathtaking canvas that mirrored the quiet transformation taking place in the small town below. Liam ran freely through the open fields, Max bounding at his heels, their laughter and joyful barks filling the air with a newfound sense of hope and belonging. The boy's once fearful eyes now sparkled with confidence and delight as he chased after Max, the dog twisting and turning with ease, ears flapping wildly. For Liam, these moments were precious, markers of a journey from darkness into light, from isolation into connection. The Yas fields, once a place of hiding and fear, had become a sanctuary where he could play without worry, where the weight of his past no longer tethered him. Jack Reynolds stood nearby, watching them with a heart full of pride and quiet satisfaction. The journey that had begun with a frightened boy hiding in a barn had evolved into a story of courage, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between a child and his protector. Max's loyalty and vigilance had never wavered, a constant presence that had helped Liam find safety and strength. As the sun dipped lower, Jack reflected on the challenges they had faced, the shadows that had haunted Cedar Hollow, the silent fears that had gripped Liam's childhood, and the community's slow but steady awakening to the need for vigilance and care. The small town was healing, its people coming together to rebuild trust and foster a safer environment for all its children. Liam paused in his play, turning to Jack with a bright smile that spoke of trust and gratitude. "Thank you," he said simply, his voice steady and filled with genuine warmth. "For everything." Jack knelt down, meeting Liam's gaze with a steady, reassuring look. "You're stronger than you know," he replied. "And you've taught us all what it means to fight for hope." Max nudged Liam's hand with his nose, a silent affirmation of the bond that had carried them through the darkest times. The dog's eyes gleamed with affection and pride. A guardian whose purpose was woven into every step Liam took toward healing. The town of Cedar Hollow was no longer just a backdrop. It was a place of renewal and promise. The community had rallied, confronting its shadows and choosing to protect its most vulnerable. Schools now held regular safety workshops, neighbors communicated openly, and local leaders worked tirelessly to ensure transparency and accountability. As evening settled, the trio made their way toward the old oak tree at the edge of the field, a spot that had become a symbol of resilience and new beginnings. Liam climbed onto the sturdy roots, Max lying down beside him while Jack stood watch nearby, the three forming a quiet tableau of hope. The sky deepened into twilight, stars beginning to twinkle faintly above, as if bearing witness to the journey that had brought them here. The gentle breeze carried the scents of earth and grass, mingling with the soft sounds of night settling over Cedar Hollow. Jack's voice broke the peaceful silence. "Remember, it's not just about surviving the darkness. It's about finding the light after." Liam nodded, eyes shining with determination. "I'm ready," he said, "ready to live." In that moment, beneath the vast expanse of sky, surrounded by the steady presence of Max and the unwavering support of Jack, Liam embraced a future defined not by fear, but by courage, love, and the endless possibilities that lay ahead. The field stretched wide around them, a living testament to the power of healing and the strength found in loyalty and compassion. As they watched the stars emerge, the story of Cedar Hollow and of a boy and his dog became one of hope renewed, darkness overcome, and a journey toward light that would inspire all who heard it.